the first of Universal Pictures' new Dark Universe movies, The Mummy, doesn't exactly bode well for what's to come. Assuming further movies even happen after this. Hoping to create an interconnecting universe of classic monsters doesn't work if you haven't thought things through properly, and as others have speculated, this feels like it's not been properly planned out at all. The previous iteration of The Mummy, the 1999 version starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, might not have been a masterpiece, but it was a good old-fashioned action-slash-adventure movie that was at least fun and entertaining. This one, not so much. Things get off to a rocky start with a rather dull-slash-boring opening featuring a crusader buried with a red jewel, which will become important later. We're then treated to what feels like a rushed backstory to the movie's title character, the mummy herself, Amane Sofia Boutella, who deserves so much better than this to show her talents, and was the only reason I even saw this movie. The backstory isn't anything new/exciting. She did something bad, tried to raise some ancient evil, but the ritual was interrupted and she got mummified for her trouble in a surprisingly less gruesome flashback than Imhotep's from the single quote 99 movie. We are then introduced to one of the least heroic heroes ever, Tom Cruise's Nick Morton, and his off-sitter, Jake Johnson's Chris Vail, in a typical shoot single quote em-up/explosions aplenty action scene that somehow manages to not be exciting/interesting at all. They're liberators of precious antiquities, that is. Looters/thieves, and Nick is kind of a jerk. Annabella Wallace-Jenny Housey agrees, and her entrance involves her delivering a well-deserved slap to Nick's face. He slept with her so he could steal from her. They're soon thrown together by Courtney B. Vance's man in charge, Colonel Greenway, and descending into a big hole where, you guessed it, they unwittingly awaken Amane. As they're transporting said corpse via airplane, things start getting hairy when Vail, looking the worse for wear after earlier being bitten by a creepy crawly, turns on murder Y, and Nick's forced to put him down. Then birds start hitting the plane and it plummets. In a seemingly heroic move, Nick gives the last parachute to Jenny and saves her life. It'll later be revealed this wasn't in fact entirely the case, and he next wakes up in a morgue. Before you can say an American werewolf in London, Nick seeing Vail looking all corpseified and grows as he delivers ominous messages to Nick, who is also experiencing visions of Amane. Seems he's been chosen by her for a second attempt at raising that ancient evil with the ritual she was so rudely interrupted during the middle of previously. It involves a dagger and that red jewel. Cruise and Johnson attempt to convey camaraderie between their characters, but their banter falls flat. There's not much humor in this movie, and what little it has really works. The biggest laugh in my theater came from Jenny's reaction to seeing Amane straddling Nick at one point. I think calling her character useless is a bit unfair. She saves Nick at least once or twice, which is kind of her, considering he was going to ditch her/leave her to fend for herself against the mummy's minions at one point, and is certainly less of a jerk than him. The romance that Cruise and Wallace try to make work between their characters doesn't really succeed much. There's a line uttered by Nick to Jenny towards the end of the movie, which Wonder Woman did so much better. Meanwhile, as mentioned elsewhere, you'd think that a movie titled The Mummy would, have more of the actual mummy in it. Alas, poor Sofia Boutella is underutilized. She does what she can with the material she's given. Probably her best/most effective scene was the one she shared with Jenny after having been captured/imprisoned. I was almost on Amane's side rather than Nick's. Sadly, Amane's powers aren't as interesting as Imhotep's were, except for the neat trick with the irises/pupils in her eyes splitting in two. Though at one point she does pull the same face of P-Ring and Sandstorm stunt as he did. At least she gets to toss Nick around like he's a rag doll. So that's something. Here's hoping she's better utilized when/if she appears in a future installment. Russell Crowe feels like he's acting in a different movie as Dr. Henry Jekyll. At least he looks like he's trying to have some fun with the role, but even when we're introduced to Mr. Hyde, who isn't really much different to Jekyll, other than having a different accent/looking all viney, it's not enough to save this film. There's some cameo appearances by some of the classic monsters in the form of pieces of them in jars, but the movie as a whole lacks cohesion. The ending is especially WTF-worthy, as the impact of certain characters' deaths is completely undone. Not that they had much to begin with. How Nick saves the day is rather anticlimactic, and what happens to slash becomes of him is somewhat vague. As much as I wanted to like this film, it's just hard to find anything particularly memorable about it. The action scenes aren't overly memorable, the characters' dynamics aren't that interesting, there's no snappy dialogue, not much depth, and nothing really that makes you go wow. Unless your wow is immediately followed by that was bad. In reference to the movie, I don't mean to sound so harsh, but it feels like all this movie achieved was setting up what's yet to come, and even then it doesn't appear as if they have a clear idea of what exactly is going to happen. If the Dark Universe is to become a thing, they're going to have to try harder than this subpar first outing. Do yourself a favor and see Wonder Woman instead, and if you've seen it already, then see it again.